Hey everyone, welcome to episode 102 of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. As always, as usual, I'm your host, Tom Detloff. With me this time around is Mr. Joe Christiana, Billy Barassa, and the counselor, Adam Shoulder. And over the next two episodes, we're going to be talking boxing, the sweet science, and how it translates onto cinema. We're going to have a really great time. Joe, how the heck are you?
Good. We do these recordings now just once a month because we're like on a modified schedule. Mm-hmm. So every time we get on, it's like the first time. You got to shake the rust off.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's been about 4 weeks, so it's definitely kind of cobwebby, without a doubt. No kidding. It's weird, right? I mean, it's hard to really get going.
It was, and then after, just like I was saying, I was just listening to the last two episodes, and that was our 100th and 101st episode.
Right, so right, big milestone.
Yeah, we did the big bonanza.
Significant.
We went back to the the marathon recording session. It was like a friggin' 4-hour recording.
That was the longest shows we put out in a while. I mean, the new release was like an hour and 40 minutes.
Mr. Payson had a lot.
Right, he did. Yeah, but it was great listening to him talk, though. He was really good. I mean, I was surprised. He was very entertaining. He was.
He shut me and Adam down about colors. That's for sure. He schooled us.
Oh yeah, no, I got seriously schooled. But yeah. I'm glad that I did, because it was shit I didn't know. So it was nice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the detail and research that Hopper put into the movie. And it was so funny, Joe, because it's just like, you're watching movies and you're making all these opinions, and then, someone like that comes in and just
I know. Adam, does it bug you at all, like on any level, when somebody just, like, you wrote a really nice review about it and everything, and then you were totally convincing in your, like, how you're putting down colors and in your opinion about colors, and I felt much the same as you did. Mm-hmm. Does it bug you at all when somebody just completely comes and contradicts you, or is that me? I think it might just
no, not if I'm wrong and they're right. If I spoke in error and this person has more information, and no, that's great. The only time it bothers me is if someone asserts themselves and inserts an opinion that is, an opinion isn't one thing, but state something as fact and it's totally wrong, and they just get behind it and defend it even when they're wrong. That's right. Different. But no, the dude is, I'm sure the dude was right. I made major assumptions.
Well, it was definitely opinion. I mean, we're talking about, whether, I guess some of it was opinion, but I think mostly it was opinion, wasn't it? Like, basically on how.
Well,
I don't know.
For me, like, the big thing was I just never knew that there were mixed race gangs. It's never been any of my experience or exposure in any way. Like, that just right. When I saw that, it was like that.
Yes, like because you were kind of disturbed that Malachi from Children of the Corn was in the Vatos gang.
Yeah, and like he was saying that apparently there are territorial gangs that back in the 80s that were mixed race, and that's something that I had no idea.
Yeah, it's neat to hear someone's perspective who has firsthand experience with that kind, Absolutely. Especially something that's so exotic to someone like me who has no contact whatsoever with gang culture. You know what I mean? But still, I am working on very hard when people have differing opinions to let them have their opinions. I really have to work on that. As I get older, I get less contradictory and less of I guess adamant about making my opinion.
Joe, it's no doubt it's the New Jersey in you.
It might be a little the New Jersey, but it's everyone. What is it they say that opinions are like assholes? Everyone's got one, right?
Everyone's got one. I got anything, Adam?
What's that?
Does anything bother you?
I think that's maybe what I was asking.
Besides my smoke alarm.
Oh, well, does that I thought that was a new bird. No, things bother me. Sure. Absolutely. In fact,
like if you had to put the boxing gloves on, would you like to take a couple of whacks at, like, someone say, like, Max Cook? Just
why would I want to punch Max? No. The things that bother me are a bit like bigger. In fact, the whole subject of what will be the closing episodes of this season of Cutting Room that I got to choose the theme for. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me. And so we're going to get to that probably in our our last two episodes.
Oh, that sounds good.
But like people, I don't know. I got a lot of flexibility with people. Human beings bother me in general. I've just come to accept that.
Joe, he somehow managed to put The Big Short and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas into the same theme.
I didn't even see it. I haven't seen. Evidently I can't read the schedule very well.
maybe you need it more in a graph form. A better interface than text.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, guys, we're talking Creed on this episode, and obviously it runs around in the Rocky universe, so we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about the 40 years of Rocky Balboa. I mean, I can't even believe it. It's completely insane. It is. I mean, it's just absolutely wild. Let's say hi to Billy. We haven't heard from him in a couple months, so it's great to have him back. Billy, have you been channeling your inner pugilist the past couple weeks?
I love the Rocky movies.
Nice.
It's guilty pleasure, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I actually really like boxing movies.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I think that's the thing about boxing movies in film is that they, first of all, it definitely, out of all the sports, I mean, it definitely translates the best onto film. Wouldn't you say so, Billy?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen Tin Cup?
Well, Kubrick's second feature film revolved around the boxing world. So
think about how many really amazing directors have all tried their hand at boxing films.
Yeah,
so many.
Even the great Ron Howard, Adam.
Yes, even Ron Howard stepped in. Absolutely,
yeah, definitely. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, Michael Mann did Ali. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, they've all, a lot of big time directors. I mean, just really good directors have definitely tried to do boxing. I mean, some with success, some with no success. But I mean, it's definitely a sport that just looks great on film. I mean. From Raging Bull to Rocky, we're doing Fat City and The Fighter on our next episode. And trust me, I've been trying to get Michael Mann involved. It was tough not to put Ali in there, but I went with The Fighter. I thought that would be more interesting.
Fat City was a surprise. That came out of nowhere, man.
Yeah, I think Fat City is. I kind of stumbled upon that movie. About 7 or 8 years ago, just on Turner Classic Movies. It was just one of those random things.
Nice.
And I loved it. I mean, I was just like, wow. And to me, it's what's interesting about Fat City is that, it was shot 4 years before Rocky. So it's like kind of like a 70s pre-Rocky movie. So I think that, that's going to say a lot about it too. So, I mean, yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. We got, David O. Russell coming up in the next episode with The Fighter and doing John Huston, Joe.
Yeah, which I took advantage of. My knowledge of John Huston was like spotty, you know what I mean? So I've been looking into him a little bit more, which has been on my list. So thank you for leading me down that path.
Yeah, no problem. It sounds like you guys kind of had a little bit of fun watching these movies and everything. We'll definitely talk about. For me, boxing. Listen, boxing is huge in my life. I mean, when I was a kid, my idol was my Uncle Bill, my mother's brother. They were both adopted, so there's no blood relation. But Bill was my idol, and he was an amateur boxer. And
was he the guy who turned you on to your music? Was he the guy who turned you on to music?
Well, some music, but not the replacements or anything like that. No.
Right.
He turned me on to, I guess, he's a really good writer. As a matter of fact, he's written a couple of books, and he is a senior writer for the Ring magazine, which is labeled the Bible of Boxing. So he's a bit, he covers boxing. I mean,
you have quite a few relative, sort of in the show business and entertainment.
Yeah,
your uncle was a jazz musician.
Yeah,
right?
My great uncle, my grandfather's brother, and my grandfather are musicians. But my great uncle, with more success. I mean, he's in his late 70s. He's still out in Las Vegas conducting shows and everything. I've been able to. He's worked with like Paul Sorvino, Liza Minnelli, Joe Piscopo. I mean, he arranged Frankie Valli. What's that big Frankie Valli song? Da, 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 da. I can't remember the name of it, but he arranged that. And, yeah, he's very talented. My grandfather was extremely talented. Obviously Jeff, who works on the show, is a pretty damn good musician too. So,
And you're not a bad host, MC.
yeah, Joe. Apparently, it's really gotten me far.
100 episodes under your belt.
100 episodes. Yeah. Damn, Skippy.
Hey, we had some really good parties on the cutting room. 2 or 3 really nice beer parties.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, jeez. Beer parties. Without a doubt. But anyway, my uncle was a big influence, and I wanted to be like him. I mean, that's how I kind of got involved in reading and writing when I was younger, and and I really got into boxing. I mean, I was enamored by it. I loved it for many years, probably between the ages of like 13 and my early 20s, and I kind of gave up on it because we kind of had a falling out, and we don't talk, and we don't, over the past 20 years we've rarely talked, unfortunately. Right. And this is a guy that was like a really big influence on me. A guy, I just worshipped, I thought the world of, and unfortunately, things happen and time moves on and so on and so forth. And I've not been able to, maintain a relationship with him, unfortunately, which sucks, but
why don't you reach out to him?
I did. He's a really difficult person, and he's a grudge type person. It's just really, it's just a difficult thing. I did actually, when we first, he hosts a boxing podcast himself, and I found out about it when we first started this show, and I went on Twitter. I saw that he was on Twitter, and I reached out to him on Twitter, and I was like, hey, I just started a podcast, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to talk and catch up. And he wrote back, hey, why don't you wait another 15 years?
Oh man, that's a bitter
Jesus,
man right there.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus Christ.
He's like, hey,
that's harsh.
It's more like, hey, what's the rush? Why don't you wait another 15 years?
Harsh.
Well, why was it on? Why was it on
really
you?
That really bothered. That's exactly what I said. I said I didn't know that it was just my complete responsibility to maintain this relationship. Do you understand? I mean, that's how high, he's very high level, like that's how he conducts himself. That's just the way he is. That's the way he's always been. I mean, he hasn't talked to my mom since I was a teenager. You know what I mean? At all. Nothing.
That's just an angry person, man. You're probably better than you don't have.
I think so, but it's just, it bothers me deep down inside, especially when I decided to do these boxing movies, because I loved him. I loved the sport. It's kind of tough for me to really watch the sport as much as I really liked it.
Was he like a father figure to you?
Absolutely, yeah. She was only like 8 years. Listen, when I was a kid, and my mom was going through her rough times, and she was really just not being she was not capable mentally and financially to take care of my brother and I. So a lot of the burden went on, my aunt and uncle, who were only 8 years old. Like, he was just in his young, he was just a, 21, 22-year-old kid, when I was 13. He was only like 8 years older than me. So, he, a lot of the, they would take care of us, basically, make sure we had food and, make sure whatever, my aunt would take me to the movies. Billy would, just make sure I was doing my schoolwork, and just he'd come over a couple nights a week and spend time and make sure watch the fights with me and blah blah blah. But he eventually got a girlfriend and got married, and I think what happened, the problem that started was she became extremely jealous of my uncle and I, our relationship, and then my mother kind of disappeared, and my uncle, they just got married, and my uncle took it upon himself to convince his new wife that I was 15 or 16, that I should stay with them for the time being. And that caused a lot of strain on his marriage, because she didn't want that. She just...
They was 21 years old, man.
Yeah, they were 23, 24 years old.
It
was just a lot. It was just a messy situation. And
he was in a difficult spot because he felt like even at that age, something must have happened.
Well, what happened? Right. What happened was what I didn't know was that his wife told him that he needs to choose between me and her.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And what?
But why? But something difficult must have happened for him to feel like he was gonna take on that responsibility to begin with.
What do you mean?
Well, like for him to say that he was gonna take care of you guys. I mean, that's a lot. It's to get him to that point where he thinks that he needs to take care of you is, that's a difficult decision just to get to that point.
Right. Well, he loved me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he had a tremendous amount of love for me.
Yeah.
And
what were you like at that time, Tom? Like at 16?
Yeah.
What were you like at 16?
Confused. I spent a lot of time with my uncle's friends. They were older than me, and I also had another friend who was in his early 20s as well that I worked with, and it was weird. I'd spend time with like people in their 20s when I was 16. Like that's who I would hang out with. Mm-hmm. Like, so what I was like, a little angry. I'm very angry because my home life had been a disaster. My father was never around. My mother was, just a party, person. And that's
your mom was a party girl?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this on the show many times. Max's mom and my mom are very similar.
Gotcha.
Very, very similar. So, yeah, I mean, it was, I was just a confused kid, and for me, I was awkward with girls, I think, in my teens. Eventually I caught up to myself. My late teens and early 20s. And but at that point I was very confused because, my mom would bring different men home and have sex with them and I'd have to hear it all fucking night. I was just weird shit, and it was just very difficult for me to adapt, as a young man, it was very difficult. So, I spent a lot of time with my uncle, I mean, he was really there for me. And like I said, it just led up to this point where his wife said me or him. And I didn't know this, that she left him because he chose me.
No,
I had no idea about this. I had no idea. I just found this out like, this year, like that had done that. But what happened was our relationship, went sour when I was 18 and, I sought out my father's side of the family. And I developed a relationship with my father. My uncle got extremely annoyed and pissed off about this. And that's why we began to where it just kind of snowballed into shit, basically.
Well, you got it. There's a lot to unravel there, Tom. I don't know. I mean, you got it. You can't bear that burden on yourself. I hope you've at least come to that.
I don't. And I'm, I mean, it hurts, but like, it's not something that like, is, pounding my head all the time or
no. Well, 20 years later, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to, but it's something that becomes sublimated that at some point, it might be affecting other behaviors.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's not like you're thinking about it every minute, but it has definitely probably shaped you.
So anyway,
way to start off the fucking show.
I'm sorry. Billy's like, his mouth is just wide open. What's going on?
Is this the boxing show? Did I come on the wrong night? I maybe I can't read the schedule either. I don't know.
This is the Cutting Room Therapy
this
podcast.
Is totally different. I haven't been on the show in a month. You guys have completely changed the format. This is way more Sally Jesse Raphael than I remember.
I think what Tom, what you're trying to get at is that you're the underdog here, just like every great boxing picture. Right?
We're talking about we have with Creed you get the father and son theme too, Joe. So it's all right?
That's right.
This is going to end with you in the ring confronting your demons, like in the 9th round, right?
Some stuff in the basement, Billy. I got to get it out, just like Rocky. Well, listen, why don't we get Adam started? Let's do Creed, Joe, and see what Adam's thinking. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking, and let's get some Rocky Balboa going. What do you say, Adam?
He's a mysterious cyborg who won't stop boasting about his brand new backyard bubble tub. a chemical zombie who just had a bionic eyeball installed in his skull. No joke. Lock up your Latin daughters, for Adam's shoulder, a.k.a. the Counselor, has arrived.
I do not come from a family of athletes. There were no Saturday afternoons or Monday nights in front of the television set watching the game. No family outings to the local venues to catch a Dodgers game or a Lakers game or a Rams game. The term sport was used only as an affectionate nickname for a clean-cut kid. But there was one exception. My mother loved boxing. She didn't follow the sport per se, but she loved to watch the fights. So through the latter part of the 70s and the better part of the 80s, we watched all the big bouts and title fights. Muhammad Ali, Leon Spinks, Larry Holmes, Jerry Cooney, Ken Norton, Thomas Hitman Hearns, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, and my mom's personal favorite, Sugar Ray Leonard. She instilled an admiration for those men and the sport in me that carried on into adulthood as I continued to watch the next generation of boxers. Iron Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Floyd Money Mayweather, Lennox Lewis. I even attended 2 championship matches, both times to see Vitaly Klitschko, who now serves as mayor of Kiev, Russia, defend and maintain his heavyweight title. It seems appropriate that it would be my mother that introduced me to the sport, as I find the classic cinematic images of the boxer emerging from the locker room into the arena somewhat metaphoric. From the safety and comfort of the womb-like locker room, the boxer waits impatiently. Suddenly, he is ushered through a long canal until he is at last brought forth, half naked but for some swaddling, into the harsh spotlight of the real-life arena. The boxer is shepherded and guided with supportive hands through the frenzied atmosphere, but eventually he must walk into that ring all alone, left to fend for himself, to survive, to fight. Maybe that's why boxing movies persist generation after generation, some kind of primal connection we all share. Or perhaps the genre's universal appeal is the story of the underdog, the loner, the misfit, the nobody who gets a shot at being somebody, of being a contender. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose, but they all have a whole lot of try in them, and they all fighting for something they believe in. 40 years ago, when the world was introduced to Rocky Balboa, we met that nobody, the Italian stallion. He was the underdog we all cheered for. Rocky was a boxer from a North Philly neighborhood, a lovable loser whose heart was bigger than his brain. But, as in all heroes' journeys, this nobody is given an opportunity to be somebody, to rise from the ranks, to write his own story. Rocky is given the chance to fight the champ, Apollo Creed. The underdog Balboa trains to an inspirited Bill Conti score, and we cheer. He chases a chicken, and we cheer. He woos the mousy pet shop employee, and we cheer. He holds his own for 15 rounds against the champ. We cheer. Rocky loses the match in a split decision, and we cheer. And why do we root so hard for Rock? Because he wasn't fighting for a title or for money or for fame. He was fighting for his self-respect, and he was fighting for love. The film Rocky went on to win the Oscar for Best Picture, and a legend was born. 2 legends, Rocky Balboa and the man who penned and played him, Sylvester Stallone. Of course, part of what cements this dual legendary status is the parallel between the struggling nobody actor Stallone and his fight to make the brilliant movie he wrote. Unlike his on-screen counterpart, Stallone won that fight, played the part like no other human could, and the rest is history. But history tends to repeat itself, and in 2015, Rocky's story was reborn in the form of Creed, director and co-writer Ryan Coogler's beautiful homage to the original that resists being guilty of being a remake. This time our boxer is Adonis Johnson, played superbly by Michael B. Jordan. Adonis is the illegitimate son of the former heavyweight champ, Apollo Creed. Like our friend and fellow cutting room cohort, Max, Adonis's father died before he was born, and it sent his early life into a tailspin. In this case, however, Apollo Creed's former wife swoops in to rescue young Adonis Johnson just in time, before the system gobbles him up. She shows him a good life, and he becomes a respectable, successful, educated young man in a good job with upward mobility. But Adonis is driven by something deeper, something in his blood, something that pushes him to spend his nights in small-time boxing bouts across the border in Tijuana. Adonis is a good guy, but there's an underlying anger that is unresolved, and he looks for that resolution in the ring. He quits his job and lays it all on the line at the local gym, but is quickly schooled on the canvas, getting his ass knocked out. His adopted mother doesn't approve either, and now Adonis is on his own, and the underdog is born. Adonis seeks out a new trainer in the form of the aging Rocky Balboa. Rocky is old, he's puffy, he's slow, but he's the same beautiful man that we love. Charming, lovable, simple, wise Rocky. However, even after learning that Adonis is his former friend's son, Rocky explains he's firmly out of the boxing game. But Adonis persists because he is a fighter. And Rocky eventually acquiesces because he is a fighter. And he sees something in this kid, and the kid is growing on him. After all, at its heart, the Rocky movies have always been love stories. Rocky embodies love and family. Rocky loved his wife, Adrian. Rocky loved his brother-in-law, Paulie. Rocky loved his trainer, Mickey. Rocky loved his son despite their estrangement. And Rocky loved Adonis's father. So, of course, Rocky trains Adonis, doing so in Mickey's old gym. And Adonis quickly shows the signs of his father's talent. Along the way, Adonis falls in love with his musician neighbor, Bianca, in a storyline that touchingly mirrors Rocky and Adrian's courtship. As fate would have it, Adonis is given an opportunity to fight the champ, Ricky Conlan, in what will be the champ's last fight before he's sent off to prison. The film essentially then follows the Rocky template, with Adonis going the distance with the champ, but fighting for something bigger than a title, fighting for his sense of self. Adonis finds his way through his struggle, finally proud to be his father's son, and also establishing himself as his own man, writing his own story, creating his own legend. But there's a subplot in Creed worth mentioning. After collapsing in the ring while training Adonis, he sees his doctor and learns that he has cancer. Rocky decides not to pursue treatment and to accept his fate. Rocky has nothing left to give. He's lost everything and everyone that he's loved. Adrian, Apollo, Mickey, Paulie, and his son. Now he learns he's losing his body. Everything this man built was built upon the ability of his body, and now that was failing him. Rocky withdraws. He pushes Adonis away, and he gives up. But Adonis fights. He fights for Rocky, and Rocky eventually learns to fight a different battle, this time outside the ring, and resolves to get treatment as Adonis prepares for his own battle. This all brings me back to the great Sylvester Stallone. His portrayal of Rocky Balboa over the past 40 years has emblazoned a character so deep into our collective cinematic soul that it's hard to believe that Balboa is not a real person. I believe Stallone to be a fantastic actor who has had the misfortune of being in too many bad action films, but I kind of like most of them too. But let's not forget, he delivered stellar performances in multiple incarnations of Balboa, and as John J. Rambo in the original First Blood, as Freddie Heflin in Copland, and as Detective Deke Da Silva in Nighthawks. Once again, in Creed, Stallone embodies Balboa with a touching, nostalgic, nuanced, and multi-layered performance that should have nabbed him the Oscar. At the end of Creed, Rocky and Adonis walk up the steps in front of the Philadelphia Art Museum, the same steps that Stallone races up in the iconic sequence from the original Rocky film. This time, Rocky struggles. He takes his time, he's short of breath, but he's determined. With Adonis at his arm, he makes it to the top, maybe for the last time. He's fighting again, this time for his life, and for Adonis. As the two boxers look out on the Philly skyline, they both comment that things are looking good. While I will debate whether one can actually look out on the Philly skyline and comment that things are looking good, but the message isn't lost. Whether we run up that mountain or crawl up, whether we go up alone or arm in arm, and perhaps no matter what inspires us and drives us up that mountain, the important thing is that we try and that we keep on fighting.
And that is Adam's wonderful take on Creed. And wow, Adam, I'm surprised.
Bravo.
Yeah,
dude.
bravo. That was really nice. That was a very well delivered intro there, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was
Every time with Adam, it's awesome, man. He definitely
he gets the spirit of the show, Joe.
He also is the champion of synopsizing the films. That's pretty impressive, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. I was so excited to have a boxing theme and to get to watch Creed for the second time.
Well, you know, Well, let's start with your mom there, Adam. She was like your household wasn't a sports household, but this boxing thing was obviously huge.
Boxing was big, yeah. My mom, she kind of does her own thing. She just celebrated her 69th birthday on Saturday, and so we took her to a pole dancing burlesque show.
Interesting.
And she ended up.
She's a free thinker.
She ended up on stage. That's all I'm saying.
But oh, man, that's wild. What?
And so yeah, she was just way into boxing. I think her father, my grandfather, I think was into boxing, and eventually, when I was young, was into wrestling back in the early, in the mid '80s when it was Captain Lou Albano and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. So right. I think it was just somehow she just kind of picked up the boxing bug from him.
Well, and not only that, but like boxing. Hey, listen, to fill a lot of TV time when television first boomed in the 50s, boxing was huge. You had your Friday night fights, and it was a big thing for television. So older people, when they were, now when they were kids, in the 50s and 60s, boxing was, I think, in the living rooms, I mean,
sure.
I think it's a huge part of their life. And let's not forget what, Muhammad Ali did, love him or hate him. I mean, he was a huge act, and he
absolutely
played well on television.
And I remember watching, still in the late 70s and early 80s, Howard Cosell's voice, and watching Muhammad Ali and some of those fights. And he was already later in his career by the time this rolled around. But yeah, just such great memories.
Yeah, well, Muhammad Ali, I mean, the Apollo Creed character was based on Ali. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And as a matter of fact, the whole Rocky, the original Rocky film was Stallone watched Chuck Wepner fight Muhammad Ali, and he just watched this man just get totally beaten and would not quit. And that fight was the inspiration for Rocky. So, which is really interesting. But Adam, I think, you mentioned a lot of names, a lot of boxers from the 70s and 80s, and it brought back, just some great memories, man. So thanks for doing that, dude.
Yeah. And it was, it was fun just to not only relive those memories, but then, go back and see this movie Creed again, which it seemed just like a month ago, and enjoyed it. And then I liked it so much better even on the second time.
Yeah. You mentioned something right off the bat too about which I think is a great theme in the movie, and it's definitely something I think Max, I mean, this is why Max loves this movie, is because it turns out that Adonis was born after Apollo had died. Right. And I think, how do you think that plays on screen, and do you think Michael B. Jordan, do you see him carrying around that sadness throughout this movie?
I do. I thought he was phenomenal because there was still that underlying anger. We first meet him as a fairly young boy, and he's angry, obviously, and he's in the system. He's in some kind of group home situation, and he's just in the system. And so I think when you see Michael B. Jordan play this part as an adult, you can see the influence that Creed's wife had on him, and he grew up. He's got a good job. He's a smart kid. He's a good guy, but there's still that drive. There's still that underlying rage that's there. There's still something that's unresolved boiling underneath there.
Right. So in order for him, I think deep down inside, to get as close to as he can to his father is to go on this journey and to seek out Rocky and to be a boxer and to be the best boxer that he can, because that's the only way I think that he could be close to a father that he never knew.
Sure.
So that's
to fight out from under a shadow, which is what some of the brilliance of the Rocky movies is, that they're more about the story. The boxing itself is sort of the physical expression of the conflict that's happening, but that's what's great about the Rocky. They're always, almost all, pretty much all of them. They have these themes, and they don't really repeat the themes. If you go from one Rocky to the next, and even with this one, the dude who who directed this one. What was his
Ryan
name?
Coogler.
Yeah, Ryan Coogler. He's smart enough and I guess a good director enough
And
to,
it's a
to
sophomore
realize that
effort. I mean, this is only his second film.
he's a young guy too, man.
Very young guy.
Yeah, he's got a hell of a career ahead of him.
I think he does.
Yeah, to see, to understand a lot of those things that you're going over, Adam, and to put the emphasis on that theme and to put that at the heart of it, literally gives the movie heart.
Well, he said that he grew up with his family sitting around watching those movies. He's an
Yeah.
actual fan of the
You can
Rocky
tell
series.
because it really is it's a remake without being a remake, because really the storyline even on point with the relationship and how that develops, and right down to that final match where one eye is swollen closed and the opponent has a broken rib, and I mean and it goes the distance. It's like such a great template.
Max,
I mean,
oh, sorry, go on, Joe.
Sorry, man. He also gets the opportunity, like Rocky got the opportunity to just get skipped right ahead to the head of the line to get a shot at the title. You know what I mean?
Fate intervenes in the same way, and then just beautiful overt homages, like putting the gray sweatsuit on Adonis and having him run, but instead of the runners in the neighborhood, it's all the bikers, and so it's just like nice little tributes to the original.
Without it having without it feeling like any of those original 6 films, like having that Rockies all have that same like feel and look. This one doesn't. I mean, it's kind of
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
it's not winking. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's
a really great accomplishment. And Rocky Balboa, I think, which is a very underrated film, the one before this.
I love Rocky Balboa.
Oh, fantastic!
It's like a really beautiful independent film, in my opinion. And we talked about neighborhood films, shining in the independent cinema, Joe, and Rocky Balboa has that feel,
Yeah, I didn't see that one, man. I gotta get back and check that one.
And
out.
Stallone,
pretty well done.
Stallone, it just embodies this character because it's obviously he wrote it, it's his, and he owns it, and that movie in particular is such also an homage to the whole arc of the series of films, and he is just on the money. He's so great.
I think it's a great companion piece with Creed too, because it's really it's really this like the epilogue to the Rocky series, and after you see Creed, you realize it's also the sort of the prologue to the Creed series. You know, they actually go hand in hand.
You're saying that Rocky Balboa and Creed just they exist.
Yeah, I think they were great together. Because I went into this movie already the last Rocky picture I saw was Rocky Balboa, so I already was kind of prepped for this version of Rocky. The old guy who owns the Italian restaurant, and he's just sort of a heavy
That's
he's like a Hulk in a hat, just sort of schlubbing it around Philadelphia and just kind of a quiet dude. And so it just plays really well the way. And I will say this too, I think that you can you can draw parallels between this and the last Star Wars picture that J.J. Abrams did, because it's very much a remix of the series and trying to do fan service for everyone. But I actually like the way Creed, way he pulls it off, because as you guys said, it doesn't look and feel exactly like, they're not just trying to mimic the Rocky movies. They're definitely trying to, put a new footprint, in the ground and go off in another direction. But it's like they do the remix thing, but it just feels like it has a lot of heart,
How hard how hard do you think it was for Stallone? This is the first movie that involves Rocky that wasn't written by Sylvester Stallone.
Or directed by him.
Or John C. Avildsen. Yeah, but most importantly, he didn't touch the screenplay. Do you think that was a hard thing for him to do, Joe? It's just
he resists it. From what I understand, there's a pretty interesting. Well, the documentary's not so great. It's more like a commercial for the movie than anything else. But I checked out this documentary that's out there on this movie, and from what he says is that he resisted the script for a couple of years before he actually gave it some thought.
Did you get a sense why he changed his mind? Did he say?
It's so, again, the documentary is not like this hard hitting, like investigative and documentary. It's more like a commercial, But from what he says, he was just like, oh, I just put it to bed. He's like, right, I put Rocky to bed. I thought that was it, and then. Yeah, I think that after he realized that this guy's got some talent, he took a second look at it and was into it.
I
Well,
think
if the
that-
shooting script is anything close to what he read, I mean, it's a really, really well done script. I thought.
I think that a lot of things.
Did you read it, Adam?
Well, I mean, if the shooting script
you-
is
okay,
is
gotcha,
if it's the same.
I think a big factor probably in that, Joe, and this is something I wanted to mention too, guys, is that Stallone's son died shortly before they filmed this movie. And I think that this script, this story, apparently helped him out with a lot of these demons that he had inside of him. I mean, this is why we're getting an extraordinary performance, because he's, probably channeling, a lot of sadness and love for his own son,
Well, that's the same thing that Adam was touching on in his intro. There was that all of the Rocky movies mirror Stallone's life in some manner.
Right.
Thematically. You had
Rocky 2 is like he suddenly has all this success and money and
I
everything,
love
and
Rocky
he's kind of like he's being spoiled. He's kind of going to seed a little bit, and
yeah. Rocky 3 is Apollo dies, right?
No, that's Rocky 4. Apollo.
That's Rocky.
Mickey
trains
dies.
Rocky. Mickey dies.
That's
Apollo-
Clubber Lang.
At Clubber Lang's hand. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, Rocky 3 was the one where he was getting soft because he was enjoying the good life.
Had a very good life.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
And he needed to find the eye of the tiger, Joe.
That's right. Even funnier than that was that there's a funny montage. What's that? There's no easy way out.
That's in Rocky 4, Joe. You're mixing.
Yeah.
That's with Drago. Rocky 4.
But this is when you listen. It's entertaining. At that point, Rocky 4. I mean, it's entertaining, but it's
goofy.
not. It's not
getting
doing.
really
Yeah, it's getting a little bit ridiculous. But when he has range, when he. In this series, in these 7 movies, when he has something to work with, he stands out, Stallone, in my opinion.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
really does.
You got to take 3, 4, and 5 out of the mix and look at
Take
the first
him out.
2.
But 3, I
Rocky
think
Balboa.
three could work. And I think Billy brought up a good point because he's dealing with a different part of himself.
True.
The successful, rich.
I
person.
agree with that.
I could see Rocky 3. I think I think it's a solid film. But Rocky 2 is, I think, his best work.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, and I think it's the most underrated film in the series. I think Rocky 2, I mean, as far as being a 70s film, I think it stands up, man. I think it's better than Rocky. I really do. I think it's just got a great look. The score is more powerful. Him and Adrian are just so great in that film together. At that point, they're just really, they're really going forward.
I haven't seen it in so long, but today
I was blown away by it.
I just watched the last 10 minutes of it or whatever, the fight, and I was seriously moved just even picking into it on my phone for 10 minutes.
Nice.
I was like, wow.
And Stallone managed to write an amazing part, a female character. The part for Adrian is such a great character over the whole character arc over the course of many movies. He was a great writer too, or is a great writer.
Yeah.
Stallone.
So that brings up the thing that I love most about the Rocky movies, which is really weird. Like they're kind of like almost a joke. Like a lot of people just look at it as an ironic joke, but I love the passage of time in that series. That it's really like the boxing scenes are great and everything, but it's really about those characters and their lives over a long period of time. I mean, the fact that you can go back and see Stallone in 1976 or whatever it was, in the prime of his life, and then you can come to this Creed movie and you see him as an older man fighting chemotherapy and stuff like that.
Right.
The best part of the entire series is just watching the characters age over time. It's almost on par with something like that guy who did the 7-Up series, the documentary.
Michael Apted.
Yeah, where you're checking in on these people every
or
6 years
Boyhood, man. It's
Boyhood.
It's
Boyhood. Yeah.
And there's this sadness that pervades the Rocky movies that really touches me, because you are watching yeah, they're fictional characters. The movies are sappy more often than not, and
it's like watching life itself.
You're watching.
And that's why Adam, and Adam,
and
said
they're not like Star Wars Jedis and shit. They're not like Captain Kirk. They're like people who are shuffling around the sidewalks in Philadelphia.
They're not Captain Kirk.
That's
true. Man. That's awesome. Yeah, and then, like Adam said, at this point, it's hard not to realize that Rocky's a real person.
Right.
I mean,
well, in that documentary, it was very funny. I think he had to catch himself a couple of times because he was referring to the character in the first person.
Like I'm doing this he was like doing that.
He was like, yeah, he was like in Rocky 2. I was doing
when I fought Clubber Lang and when I yeah. So the one thing, like I think that I love boxing movies, and I'm just curious what you guys think about this. I think that the boxing movie is quintessentially American in the same way that a Western is, or a car chase movie is. Like every culture has its myths about battle. And in Asian cinema, it's in Chinese cinema, it's kung fu. In Japanese cinema, it's samurai epics. Every place in the world has its myth about a hero doing one-on-one battle with something else. In Germany, it's the classic all the myths of the dragon slayers and stuff like that. So something that I love about boxing is that it maintains that violent animal spirit that's in humankind, and it manifests it in this one-on-one way that's not killing and it's not like a Western where your goal is to kill another person, and there's something oddly refreshing and heroic about that, and violent at the same time. Like there's something pure about that. Do you guys see the mythological angle to these movies?
Yeah, it's fair. It's a fair game. I think that's part of the beauty about boxing. And also there's it's odd because even if you have this disdain for your opponent, always at the end there's a respect. They respect.
If they're cool. Yeah.
But
like my favorite part, I was so hoping in Creed, and I know this is jumping right to the end of the movie, but I was so hoping, like keeping my fingers crossed, that at the end of the fight, no matter what happened, the British guy was going to come over and say, "Good fight, you did awesome, kid." And he did that at the end of the movie, and that made me really happy.
Because that's real. That's if you watch boxing,
because they're fucking with each other, like at the press conferences and everything. Of course,
but always at the end of that fight, they
embrace.
Them out, they embrace and they hug and they have a respect. I mean, even the deepest, darkest rivalries in the history of boxing, that always happens, and I've always found that amazing. Well, two things always happen: they embrace, and the winner always thanks God.
The only the people in the Rocky movies who don't have that mutual respect for their opponents are the ones who lose the greatest. The Mr. T and the Russian guy.
That's the mythological thing. Your defeat is in your moral failing, not in the battle itself. Right. Like it's bullshit, but it's good bullshit. I like that bullshit.
I totally agree with that. I mean it's something that's characteristically American, that it's the underdog who has to, like the immigrant underdog who gets their opportunity and fights and works really hard to come out on top and find a little piece of glory through the it's the American struggle. That it's definitely built into the mythos there. I mean, there's no mistaking that's pretty conscious in there. In Rocky, I mean, Apollo was the American kid who, when we get to him, he's already become too cocky and too cocksure, and so he gets taken down a rung,
Yeah, I think that for me too, watching Creed, I was really in love with the way they set up the character in the series as this black kid who has it's like an immigrant story for what's going on right now, where like the director works at San Francisco's juvenile hall. He has for years, and he works with those kids. So when I was watching those scenes, I was like, this is like so important for what's going on right now. And that character is great because he's a kid of privilege. He's grown into privilege, but he still has the shadow over his past of the illegitimate fatherhood and everything. And he still has anger that seems like someone from the outside would say, why are you angry? Why are you so angry? You have a good life. You come from money and everything. But he still has this nagging, bothersome thing in his soul that he can't quite get rid of. And he has to prove not only to himself but to everyone else that that's justified, and there's a way to deal with that. Like, to me, that writer director was setting up a very, I think that's a mythological character that he created there that bundles up a lot of angst that those guys are going through right now.
And we're talking Creed, we're talking Michael B. Jordan, that's Stallone, Ryan Coogler, Adam. More Rocky.
Yes.
Is it on its way? Are we going to be?
I almost ended my piece with I changed the ending, but originally it was basically a plea to Sylvester Stallone for like one more. Let's just have one more time around the block with Rocky.
With Rocky and Adonis. One more.
Sure. Round. Oh, that would be great. I think absolutely one more round, and then then we can be done with him and we can hand the torch off officially.
Do you?
I love their relationship in that movie.
Really nice.
Great, where Rocky's like, "You're like a woodpecker. It just funk, you won't go away."
I don't know. I mean, I would be amazing if Adonis could last 40 years on screen. If they could somehow manage to do that over the years, and have this whole century-long Rocky saga. That would be something. Joe, you think we got some more Rocky coming our way?
Wasn't there a scene in Back to the Future where it was in Back to the Future 2 where it was like Rocky 80 or something?
No, that was Jaws in Back to the Future, but in Spaceballs, Joe.
Spaceballs, yes. Rocky 5,000.
The line is, next up is our review of Rocky 5,000.
Yeah, right.
So you never know. Oh, man. All right, we have so much more boxing to talk about. On our next episode, we're going to be doing Fat City and The Fighter, 2 wonderful films, and we're also going to be, I'm sure, talking about more of our love for boxing in film and so on and so forth. Guys, any final thoughts on Creed before we say good night to everybody? Absolutely not.
Dead silent.
Terrific. That's the one thing about asking that question. Is when nobody has anything else to say, Joe, and it's just
well, it's difficult because you don't know who's supposed to talk. You want to
make sure everybody got their thoughts in.
I mean, I got a couple little things here, but nothing
major. I hear you. All right. Well, let's see. We're gonna say goodnight then. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is produced by Tom Detloff and Joe Christiana. It's edited by Joe Christiana. Joe, how's the book thing going? By the way, before we say goodbye, real quick.
Oh, good. I just had starting my editing stuff in here with the book editor. So in the throes of that. So
how's that going?
I just started actually, so I got a few weeks of work I think ahead of me. So. And
you're working with somebody on that?
Yeah. So I'm starting to get notes in slowly.
Male or female?
Female.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
You have some female editor coming to your home?
No.
Are you exchanging notes over the?
Yes, over the interwebs.
That's boring.
It's not as salacious as you might imagine.
You don't have clandestine meetings in the backseat of your car on a rainy day in the parking lot.
Reading my passages to her. Hey, once upon a time.
Well, you can check out Joe's film work at ChristianaProductions.com. You can check out Adam's start.
Oh yeah, and Adam's Fall. So I know that these were. Thank you for bringing it up, Tom. I know these recordings last way longer than they're out there. So after August 2016, the book's called The Atavist Fall, so go look for it.
Check out Adam Starland PC at starlandpc.com and check out.
I gotta give you new info for that.
Talk to me.
Well, we retitled it, we renamed it, we re-edited it, and we are getting it out there again as a slightly different feel, but it's got a different name now, and it's getting out there a different way now.
So this is a work in progress.
Well, it's back up and we're calling it Quality Problems right now.
Okay.
And we've it was always a comedy drama, and as silly as this sounds, now it's more of a dramedy, and that's a whole half-hour conversation right there that we're not even going to get into the difference between a comedy drama and a dramedy. But I can tell you, out here in Hollywood, there's a difference. God,
Gotcha.
So, but anyway, so we have retooled it a bit, and we will keep you posted.
Do it. All right. Max's blog at maxcookuncorked.com. Check him out. And you can follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff at TCRM Podcast. Also, we'd like to thank Jeremy Garcia of Dartboard Cinema for helping us out on the internet. He's the best. Next episode, Fat City, The Fighter, more boxing. Looking forward to it. Until then, we're over and we're out. Ciao.
Tune in next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.
Less contradictory and less of, I guess, adamant about making my opinion.
Joe, it's no doubt it's the New Jersey in you.
It might be a little of the New Jersey, but it's everyone. What is it they say that opinions are like assholes? Everyone's got one, right? Everyone's got one.
I got anything, Adam?
What's that?
Does anything bother you?
I think that's maybe what I was asking.
Besides my smoke alarm.
Oh, well, does that I thought that was a new bird. No, things bother me. Sure. Absolutely. In fact,
like if you had to put the boxing gloves on, would you like to take a couple of whacks at like someone say like Max Cook? Just
why would I want to punch Max? No. Things that bother me are a bit like bigger. In fact, the whole subject of what will be the closing episodes of this season of Cutting Room that I got to choose the theme for. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me. And so we're going to get to that probably in our our last two episodes.
Oh, that sounds good.
Like people, I don't know. I got a lot of flexibility with people. Human beings bother me in general. I've just come to accept that.
Joe, he somehow managed to put The Big Short and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas into the same theme.
I didn't even see it. I haven't seen. Evidently I can't read the schedule very well.
Maybe you need it more in a graph form. A better interface than text.
Yeah. Maybe that's
well, anyway, guys, we're talking Creed on this episode, and obviously it runs around in the Rocky universe, so we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about the 40 years of Rocky Balboa. I mean, I can't even believe it. It's completely insane. It is. It's just absolutely wild. Let's say hi to Billy. We haven't heard from him in a couple months, so it's great to have him back. Billy, have you been channeling your inner pugilist the past? Hey everyone, welcome to episode 102 of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. As always, as usual, I'm your host, Tom Detloff. With me this time around is Mr. Joe Christiana, Billy Barassa, and the counselor, Adam Shoulder. And over the next two episodes, we're going to be talking boxing, the sweet science, and how it translates onto cinema. We're going to have a really great time. Joe, how the heck are you?
good. We do this. We do these recordings now just once a month because we're like on a modified schedule. So every time we get on, it's like the first time. You know, you got to shake the rust off.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. It's been about 4 weeks, so it's definitely kind of cobwebby, without a doubt. No kidding. It's weird, right? I mean, it's hard to really get going.
It was, and then after, just like I was saying, I was just listening to the last 2 episodes, and that was our 100th and 101st episode.
Right,
so
right, big milestone.
Yeah, we did the big bonanza.
Significant.
We went back to the like the marathon recording session. It was like a friggin' 4-hour recording.
That was the longest. Yeah, the longest shows we put out in a while. I mean, the new release was like 1 hour and 40 minutes. Which is
Mr. Payson had a lot.
Right, he did. Yeah, but it was great listening to him talk, though. He was really good. I mean, I was surprised. He was very entertaining. He was
he shut me and Adam down about colors. That's for sure. He schooled us.
Oh yeah, no, I got seriously schooled. But I'm glad that I did, because it was shit I didn't know. So it was nice.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the detail and research that Hopper put into the movie. You know, and it was so funny, Joe, because it's just like, you know, you're watching movies and you're making next episode with the fighter and doing fats. John Huston, Joe.
Yeah, which I took advantage of. My knowledge of John Huston was like spotty, you know what I mean? So I've been looking into him a little bit more, which has been on my list. So thank you for leading me down that path.
Yeah, no problem. It sounds like you guys kind of had a little bit of fun watching these movies and everything. We'll definitely talk about, I mean, for me, boxing is huge in my life. I mean, when I was a kid, my idol was my Uncle Bill, my mother's brother. You know, they were both adopted, so there's no, you know, there's no blood relation. But Bill was my idol, and he was an amateur boxer. And
was he the guy who turned you on to your music? Was he the guy who turned you on to music?
Well, some music, but not the replacements or anything like that. No, right. He turned me on to, I guess, he's a really good writer. As a matter of fact, he's written a couple of books, and he is a senior writer for the Ring magazine, which is labeled the Bible of boxing. So he's a bit, you know, I mean, he covers boxing. I mean,
you have quite a few relative, sort of in the show business and entertainment.
Yeah,
your uncle was a jazz musician.
Yeah,
right?
My great uncle, my grandfather's brother, and my grandfather are musicians. But my great uncle, with more success. I mean, he's in his late 70s. He's still out in Las Vegas conducting shows and everything. I've been able to. He's worked with like Paul Sorvino, Liza Minnelli, Joe Piscopo. I mean, you know, he arranged Frankie Valli. What's that big Frankie Valli song? I can't remember the name of it, but he arranged that. And, you know, he's very talented. My grandfather was extremely talented. You know, obviously Jeff, who works on the show, is a pretty damn good musician too. So,
and you're not a bad host, MC.
Yeah, Joe. Apparently, it's really got all these opinions, and then, you know, someone like that comes in and just
I know. Adam, does it bug you at all, like on any level, when somebody just like you wrote a really nice review about it and everything, and then you were totally convincing in your, like, how you're putting down colors and in your opinion about colors, and I felt much the same as you did. Mm-hmm. Does it bug you at all when somebody just completely comes and contradicts you, or is that me? I think it might just be
not if I'm wrong and they're right. If I spoke in error and this person has more information, and no, that's great. The only time it bothers me is if, you know, someone asserts themselves and inserts an opinion that is, an opinion isn't one thing, but, you know, state something as fact and it's totally wrong, and they just get behind it and defend it even when they're wrong. That's right. Different. But no, the dude is, I'm sure the dude was right. I made major assumptions.
Well, it was definitely opinion. I mean, we're talking about, you know, whether, I guess some of it was opinion, but I think mostly it was opinion, wasn't it? Like, basically on how. Well, I don't know.
For me, like, the big thing was I just never knew that there were mixed race gangs. It's never been any of my experience or exposure in any way. Like, that just like when I saw that, it was like, that
yes, like you, because you were kind of disturbed that Malachi from Children of the Corn was in
Yeah,
the Vatos gang.
yeah, and like he was saying that apparently there are territorial gangs that back in the '80s that were mixed race, and that's something that I had no idea.
Yeah, it's neat to hear someone's perspective who has firsthand experience with that kind, especially
Absolutely.
something that's so exotic to someone like me, who has no contact whatsoever with gang culture. You know what I mean? But still, I am working on very hard when people have differing opinions to let them to let them have their opinions. I really have to work on that. I as I get older, I get less.
Last couple weeks.
I love the Rocky movies.
Nice.
It's yeah, guilty pleasure, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I actually really like boxing movies.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I think that's the thing about boxing movies in film is that they, first of all, it definitely, out of all the sports, I mean, it definitely translates the best onto film. Wouldn't you say so, Billy?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Have you guys ever seen Tin Cup? I mean,
Well, Kubrick's second feature film revolved around the
Yeah.
boxing world. So
Think about how many really amazing directors have all tried their hand at boxing films.
Yeah,
So many,
even the
decade
great
after
Ron
decade.
Howard, Adam.
Yes, even Ron Howard
Yeah.
stepped in. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's been so many. I mean, Michael Mann did Ali. I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, they've all, a lot of big time directors. I mean, just really good directors have definitely tried to do boxing. I mean, some with success, some with no success. But I mean, it's definitely a sport that I mean, just looks great on film. I mean, from Raging Bull to Rocky. We're doing Fat City and The Fighter on our next episode. And trust me, I've been trying to get Michael Mann involved. It was tough not to put Ali in there, but I went with The Fighter. I thought that would be more interesting.
Fat City was a surprise. That came out of nowhere, man.
Yeah, I think Fat City is. I mean, I kind of stumbled upon that movie. About 7 or 8 years ago, just on Turner Classic Movies. It was just one of those random things.
Nice.
And I loved it. I mean, I was just like, wow. And to me, it's what's interesting about Fat City is that it was shot 4 years before Rocky, so it's like kind of like a 70s pre-Rocky movie. So I think that that's going to say a lot about it too. So I mean, yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. We got David O. Russell coming up in